All right, so again, today is Monday, December 2nd. This is the 2 p.m. section. Recording is on. And today what we're going to do is we're going to go over some end of semester logistics and kind of review things going into your final projects, which are due on Wednesday. Okay, so one of the things that I have completed, let's share my screen. Is the attendance tracker. So as of today, here is a list of, where is it? Attendance tracker of the excused and unexcused absences for your section. All right, if you have an excused absence, it will say excused. If it says absent, that is just an unexcused absence. You could have one unexcused absence and opt out of the final exam. If you have two, you have to take the final exam. Okay, so I put in all the excuses that were given, and that sheet should be updated accordingly. Sorry. Plugging into the computer here in the main room. All right, so again, to access the attendance tracker, I made an announcement first or second week of the class with a link to this Google Sheet. All right, so that's what we've been tracking attendance throughout the semester. This obviously does not include today or Wednesdays. All right, so tomorrow, under assignments, the assignment replacement is due. All right, so if you're going to do the assignment replacement, you have to complete that by tomorrow. All right, that's the 500-word paper on a company called BioCryst. So let's see if I can jump over here. BCRX is their ticker. And a good way to see the assignment replacement is to go to the ANR screen. So as of today, this company's trading at a share price of $7.37. The average sell side target for 12-month share price is $14.64. Why? That's a big gap between what Wall Street says this company should be worth and what it's trading at today. Why is there such a big gap? That is the 500-word minimum paper assignment replacement. And I say using things from this semester. So you could talk about it in terms of an EIC. You could talk about it in terms of evaluation, like do it as is, do a target valuation, what changed and why, like what needs to happen for the market to see it. But you do a multiple analysis, but you got to do something that explains the gap. Right? That's really what this assignment replacement is about. 500-word minimum paper due tomorrow, I believe at 5 o'clock. All right. So questions about this? Yes. Absolutely. Got to support the data that you give me. All right. So assuming you complete the assignment by tomorrow, and again, just a little context, I think I mentioned this company is a small biotech that has one drug. It just launched. It's a rare disease, and there's like 10 to 15,000 people in the world that have this disease. They have a treatment for this disease with this one drug that's under patent, and that's the issue. So they're just launching this drug. Question is, why is there such a gap between what the market thinks they're worth and what they're actually worth? Okay? So that is the assignment replacement. If you do the assignment replacement, it will replace any individual assignment potentially, but not an exam. So going back to stop share. So it will replace any one of the 12 homeworks or your Bloomberg certification. It will not replace an extra credit assignment. It will not replace the midterm exam. It will not replace a group project. All right. Now, you do not tell us what to replace. The TAs will choose which assignment to replace. All right. They will do that later this week. And so let's say you missed homework 8. All right. So instead of getting a 0 on homework 8, the TAs will give you 2 points on homework 8 and treat it as if you submitted it on time. Yes. Well, it's not dropped. It's the lowest homework grade would actually get a full score. So say you did all 12 homeworks, but one of them you got like a 1 out of 2, then they'd give you a 2 out of 2 on that assignment. Okay. Now I got a question about this in the last class. There are some people who, for whatever reason, did not submit a peer review and got a -1 on the peer review. If you get a -1 on a peer review, you have to take the final exam. Right? You can use the assignment replacement to replace a missed submitted peer review. Okay. So if that applies to you, if you didn't do 1 peer review, you could replace it. If you missed 2 peer reviews, you're taking a final exam. So again, it'll replace an individual assignment, but not an extra credit. That is due tomorrow, optional assignment replacement. Next, Wednesday. Wednesday's presentation day. You will be making your 4th group project presentation. What's your industry again? Pharmaceuticals, healthcare? Okay. So you should be pretty familiar with biocrystalline issues if you've done pharmaceutical industry. But in any event, you'll be doing your company plus 3 others. Okay. You'll be submitting screenshots, the GUID, the WAC, the EEOs for all of those companies. Make sure the data is all in there. Right. And you'll be doing pre-member discount, your company against the 3 others. Right. If you made any adjustments. So for example, you had to adjust the ROIC or you had to adjust the growth or something like that. Because at a -G, you make some adjustments. Explain the adjustments first. I made these adjustments to this company, right? Then explain the premiums or discounts, right? The growth spread combination, premium or discounts for PE, EV to EBIT, EV to revenue, multiples, right? That's your 10 minutes. Use data, support it with data. Don't talk about the data, just do be general and do the premium or discount evaluation. Okay. So Wednesday, basically, we're in the final 2 days of class. So Wednesday's pretty much your final day of class, right? And it's just presentation day. We'll go through all 6 presentations on Wednesday. At the end of day Wednesday, around 4:30 or 5, after the last class is done with their presentations, the Bloomberg Trading Challenge, 2nd semester, ends on Wednesday. Okay. So back to the Bloomberg Trading Challenge. Let's take a look and see where we stand today. TMSG. This is section 201. If the trading challenge were to end today, this would be the rankings. Now, remember, don't get out of your stocks. Don't go above 300,000 in cash. That'll disqualify you. Even the trading challenge ends on Wednesday, assume there's a Thursday. Okay. Everybody has to do at least 10 longs. You've all met that requirement. And so this is the ranking of today. I have a feeling, is it Jay? Is it Friedman? Who's the top team there? I don't think anybody's catching you in the next 2 days. Like whatever you guys did, congratulations. You're likely to be the winner. Not only this class, but I think you have the best return in all the classes. So maybe you can tell us what you did one day. But in any event, 21%, 6 weeks, 5 weeks is actually pretty good. But regardless, they're probably going to get 5 points on Wednesday. The next 2 teams, 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. And it looks like we got a pretty good competition for the 3 and the 2, or the second 4 and the 3. Okay. Essentially even the 2. But as I said, it's not where you end up today. It's where you end up on Wednesday. That's when the second half ends. As I said, I'll post the screenshots of the final ranking end of day Wednesday. Questions about the trading challenge? All right. Well, while the screen is up, just a couple of commentary I want to make about the trading challenge. Appreciate you guys putting all the effort into this. I gave you the trading challenge really for 2 reasons. Number one, this is the very first week of class. We talked about cornerstones. I said expectations was really critical to valuation. That's what the trading challenge is all about. It's all about expectations, right? It's why it's so difficult to beat the market in the short term, because there's nothing to do with actual performance. All right. There's a good Warren Buffett quote for this. He says that in the long run, stock prices are like a weighing machine. But in the short term, they're like a voting machine, right? Today is what I think you're going to do, but when the data comes out, we adjust, right? But that's the point. Short term has nothing to do with intrinsic value, has everything to do with performance against expectation. So you can have a company that's doing poorly and they do less poorly than expected, price goes up. You can have a company does well, they do less well than expected, price goes down, right? And that's why it's so, again, difficult to beat the market in the short term. But if you go work for a financial advisor, in fact, rule of thumb, they'll tell their clients, if you're going to invest in equities, don't touch the money for 5 years, right? Because the market's going to zig and zag in the short term, right? If you're going to invest in equities, you take a longer term perspective. That's where you tend to get better returns, right? But some people do short-term trading, and I'm just telling you, it's a different game. It's different than what we really talked about in this class in terms of the modeling, because it's not about the cash flows over time. It's about how you're doing against those expected cash flows. So when new information comes out, the market's constantly adjusting in the short term. You saw that in the trading challenge, but more importantly, you paid attention, right? What I really forced you to do for the last 3 months is see the outside world. You know what's going on in the markets. You know what's going on with companies. And that's useful, not only in this class, but in your jobs. I mean, there are so many people that don't pay attention. They don't even know what's going on with their own company, much less what's going on with the marketplace. And I think it will give you a leg up against other people. I was talking to somebody, a friend of mine. It's really tragic. She worked in Manhattan for 7 years. She didn't do anything. She went to work. She was on a subway or bus. She went to her job and slept. That was it. Didn't go to restaurants. Didn't take advantage of Broadway. Didn't event any sports, any events. Didn't hang out in Central Park. She just worked, right? She regrets it now. But the same thing, like, when you go to your job, you're going to have a lot of pressure to just do your job. Pay attention to the world around you. Experience some of the things. Make you a better person. You'll enjoy it more. But more importantly, you'll be better than the people that graduated from other schools that are doing that, have no idea what's going on in the real world. And you have a bigger and broader perspective. So hopefully you continue that beyond this class. All right, so the trading challenge ends Wednesday, right? On Thursday, you have 2 additional assignments due, right? You have a peer review for the trading challenge, both half of the semesters. Please fill it out. And you have, for the final group project, the peer review for the multiples project. Both of those are due on Thursday, right? And I skipped over something. As part of your final project presentation on Wednesday morning at 10 a.m., you also have to submit a table for all 4 of your projects, who presented which of the projects. Because remember, of course, the 4 projects, everybody has to present at least once. I want a list of who presented for each of the projects. You could submit it as a table as part of your PowerPoint. You can submit it as an additional PowerPoint file or an Excel file in addition to your PowerPoint, but submit that with your presentations that you're submitting on Wednesday. And then make sure that everybody has presented over the 4 presentations. You got a hand up? Question? You can do a separate submission. You can put as a screenshot in your submission. Just make sure you submit that with your submission for Wednesday. Okay. All right. So back to Thursday. Thursday, you will basically do the final 2 peer reviews, right? And by this point, all the grades for everything are in Canvas. Okay, so all the grading will be in by Thursday, right? Including the final projects, right? And that is very important because Thursday night, the TAs are going to be very busy, right? So the TAs are going to do 2 things. First, they're going to do the assignment replacements. So they replace the assignment that has the biggest gap between your score and a grade or a missed assignment, okay, as we talked about before. So again, say you missed homework 8, you can set it a 0, they'll give you 2 points, and they'll tell you which assignment they replaced. Okay, so if you want to argue with them about it after the fact, you'll at least know what they replaced. Okay. Now, after they do the homework assignment replacement, then they will apply the opt-out criteria for the final exam. Okay. That opt-out criteria has been here since the first day of class in the syllabus. So transparently, they're going to apply the opt-out criteria that we've already told you about, right? So in terms of that opt-out criteria, I'll just remind you of it. Go back to the syllabus. It is here. So late Thursday night, going into Friday morning, they'll apply the opt-out criteria. So if you've completed all the individual assignments, Bloomberg certification, 12 homework assignments, got a minimum grade of at least 1 out of 50% on each one of those and didn't miss one, right? If you got a minimum 6 out of 10 on the midterm exam, right? If you didn't get any negative peer reviews or miss a peer review, right? If you weren't referred to the honor council, or if you didn't have a team penalty applied to me. So for example, when the student made the mistake and I threw him out of class, like that team's taking the final exam. But other than that, if that didn't happen to you, then you can opt out of the final exam. So you have a pretty good idea now, but you'll find out officially Friday, probably mid to late day. So what'll happen is the TAs will send an announcement by section, right? Once they've applied the opt-out criteria, and they're going to tell you to check Elms assignments, and they're going to tell you to particularly check this assignment called final exam opt-out points. If after they make that announcement on Friday, you check final exam opt-out points and see 10 points next to your name, you have opted out of the final exam, you are done. All right, so for all intents and purposes, Wednesday's your last class, right? If you see a 0 next to your name after they make the announcement, then you're taking the final exam 1 week from today, okay? So the final exam will be during your class time that you're registered for. So for you, 2 to 3:30, similar to the midterm, you'll take it on Elms. It'll be a 10-question multiple choice exam, open book, open notes, individual exam, and to some degree, it is cumulative, right? And what I mean by that, it's going to focus on valuation and multiples, but valuation multiples are key value drivers. And we talked about that since day 1 of the class, right? So in a way, it has to be cumulative, but it's focusing more on what we've been doing in the last 5 weeks of class, right? So that is the final exam for those of you who have to take it. That's 10 points, 10 questions, 1 point per question. Submit the exam on Monday, right? And then basically the exam is auto scored. And then after 5 o'clock on Monday, you'll see your grade. And then you'll know your final grade for the semester. So for the vast majority of you, you'll know your final grade probably by this Thursday. You'll know what your letter grade is going to be. Yeah.
Is the extra credit part your grade?
No. So that's why I sent out the announcement again today, and I want to clarify that. So great question. So in this class, as I said, Elms grading does not work, right? Because Elms was never designed, I've told you multiple times, to have more than 100 points available in a class. And this semester, with the extra credit, including the 1 point I'm giving for today, there's 105 points, 5 points of extra credit across all these extra credit assignments, plus the 100 points of the class. And so when I put 105 points into the grade book, it's like, I don't know how to handle this, right? Because what Elms does, it tries to do a percentage of the total. So I got an email from a person. It's like, I thought I was on track to get an A in the class. Elms tells me I'm going to get a B plus or an A minus because they're doing percentage of 105. All right, so 93 divided by 105 looks like it's not an A, right? But that's not the way I'm going to grade. So on Tuesday of next week, I'm going to download the grade book to Excel. And then I'm going to sum all of the points across all of your assignments. That sum total is your grade. So if you have 93 total points out of 105, that's an A. If you have 90 total points out of 105, that's an A minus. If you have 87 total points out of 105, that's a B plus. To pass this class as a finance or accounting major, you need 70 total points, right? That's the minimum for a finance or accounting major to pass a class, right? The only non-standard grade is A plus, because I'm giving 5 points of extra credit and an assignment replacement. An A plus in this class requires 103 points. Okay, so that's the only one that would be, I would call non-standard. So 97 is not an A plus, 103 is an A plus or higher out of 105. Questions about grading. So you should have a pretty good idea of your grade. I mean, especially after Wednesday, right? Because all the grades pretty much are in by Wednesday. And unless you're getting peer review down, like the final presentation will be in, just add up all your points. And then that'll be your letter grade. Like, it's pretty transparent. I'm not going to do anything that you wouldn't otherwise see. Right, but the official letter grades will be put in probably next Tuesday night or Wednesday to UMEC. So you'll see the letter grades next week, but you'll know your grade before the class is over. Right. Great question. Other questions about grading? I want to be really transparent about this because I don't want people to be confused about their grades or how we're going to do it. All right. So again, Friday, you'll find out whether you're opting out. Although, like I said, there's the criteria. You should have a pretty good idea whether you're opting out this week. All right. If you have to take the final exam, you'll take it during class time you're registered for next Monday. Either way, our final class together will be Wednesday, which will be our presentation day. Okay, so that's our official last day of class. And then for those who take the midterm, you'll take it on Monday, or sorry, final, take it on Monday. If you don't take the final exam on Monday, you're done on Wednesday. And then the TAs will apply the criteria, and that's kind of how it goes. Questions about any of that? I'm going to throw a lot at you real quick. Oh, sorry. Is it Wednesday? Yeah. Follow these instructions on Elms. So let's be clear about that one. Thank you for clarifying that. The Bloomberg peer review. Yes, Wednesday. Thank you. So edit. Bloomberg peer review to Wednesday. Final project, multiples peer review Thursday. And again, those are just quicker because I got to get it all in the end semester. All right. But make sure on Wednesday that you also submit who presented for each of the presentations. Need that with your presentations on Wednesday as well. Yes. You can either put in the presentation as a random slide, or you can add it as an additional file when you submit the presentation. But either way, I just need to see it, just to make sure everybody presented. Okay. Great questions. Any other questions about that? Yeah, threw it a lot at you. All right, the last thing I wanted to mention is, well, two last things. One is there is a final exam, or sorry, final extra credit opportunity today. It's 1 point, right? And it is here. It's called final point opportunity. Okay, so there will be 5 extra credit points. This is the 5th. And that's it. There will be no additional extra credit opportunities. And for your final grade, I do not round. So for example, if you get a 92.5, not rounding that off to a 93. A 92.5 is an A minus, right? So if you have any chance that you say, oh, I'm on the borderline, I want to improve my grade, do the extra credit. That's it. And there will be no more extra credit. So if you come to me next week, it's like, Professor Perfetti, I'm like 1 point away from the grade that I want. Is there anything I can do? The answer is no. What you could have done was the assignment replacement and the 5 extra credit points. That was it. That was a lot. I'm not giving any more. So take advantage of what's available to you before it goes away. All right. So what is the final point opportunity? Prior to COVID, the university sends out peer or class reviews. We had to submit a review for this class. Right. And we used to regularly get 70 to 80% completion rates for basically students giving feedback on classes that they took. Since COVID, it's dropped to like 20 to 30% university-wide. Like nobody wants to give feedback anymore for whatever reason. Maybe we're like overly bombarded by it. Maybe we just tired of it. Maybe you just want to be a rebel. I don't know. But people are just not giving feedback on anything. It goes beyond the university, right? So here's the deal. If you submit an honest review for this class, submit the actual pure evaluation, or not the pure evaluation, the, what's it called? What is it actually called? The course evaluation. Thank you. If you submit the course evaluation for this class, and I want an honest one, like you hate the class, say you hate the class. That's okay. Whatever your honest feedback is for the class, please give it. And you do that, you can go to final point opportunity. It's a true false question. It basically says, on my honor, I submitted the course evaluation. You answer that true, you get 1 point. Okay, that's it. In fact, I'm going to leave class a little bit early today so that you can do it. I don't want to influence it in any way that I'm like looming over you and you're like, oh, he's looking at me, so I can't say anything negative. So I'll be out in the hall and I'll give you time to actually work on it today. okay? But I do think it's important that you fill it out, and it's an easy point for your semester grade. And if you don't want to do it, then don't do it. I'm not forcing you to do it, but then don't go to the extra credit opportunity and say, I did, if you didn't do it. That wouldn't be right, right? But nonetheless, honor system, final point opportunity, do that, submit it. Now, in the last class, they told me that it was down. A few people were trying to do it like error, another university down system. If that is actually the case today, can somebody check that? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's like fading in and out. Is it what? Sometimes it's there.
Yeah, it's like
Okay. So here's the point. Because there's some technical difficulties, I'll give you till tomorrow to complete it. Now, I'll still give you some time today if you're able to, but I'm going to change the deadline till tomorrow just because the university is having some trouble apparently with the system. But please take the time. And not just for my class, do it for all your classes. Believe it or not, I read it. Like faculty read it. We take your suggestions seriously. And if you think there's things that we can do, give us the feedback. Happy to read it and, just make it constructive would be my only recommendation. But regardless, take your time to do that. All right. Last thing I want to mention, TAs. I need 2 additional TAs. 2 of my TAs are graduating for the spring semester. The university in its infinite wisdom has decided that they're going to let me have another 192 students in the spring. This class was never built for 192 people. I mean, you can see we have 32 terminals in the room. In fact, that terminal's been missing now for 8 weeks. They never brought it back. This is not enough computers and too many students, but whatever. We're going to have 4 sections of 50 people again next semester. So I need 4 TAs. And the primary role of the TA, as you probably know, is they do office hours, Thursday, Friday, 2 hours a week. And they also do grading, all the individual assignments. Right. I do group projects, they do individual assignments. Pay $17 an hour times 10 hours a week. And you get an office up in the finance lab, right? So if you're interested, there's a link on here to submit that you're interested. You need A- in the class to do that, and you had to be in the class. So ironically, I've been getting a lot of emails from master's and MBA students asking if they could be my TA for the spring. And my default answer is no, right? Because if you've ever gone to an office hour and you're like asking for help, and I put you in there with an MBA student who'd never taken a class, you probably know more about the answer you're asking about than they would ever know, because they just didn't experience what you did. So I actually have an exception for this class for the university to have undergraduate TAs for an undergraduate class. Right? And so I will not accept a master's student to be my TA. The only TAs I'll accept took the class. All right. And it's for your own benefit, because you guys understand this material better than a master's student ever will. Just not that not that they couldn't understand, it's they were never exposed to this. So they very much cannot help you in the future. So that's why I need TAs out of this class to be TAs for this class. So that's an opportunity if anybody's interested. All right. So what I thought we would do for the rest of our time today is a little bit of a review. Right. And what I wanted to review was just kind of some of the concepts for the final exam, as well as just, for the semester in general. And in context of the review, the point is on the final exam, if you do have to take it, like I'm probably not going to be asking questions that we didn't talk about in class that weren't in the lecture notes, right? I'm not going to basically say, I read something in the book. I'm going to ask you something in the book that I'm not going to ask you about something in the book that we didn't talk about, right? That's very highly unlikely in the final exam. Same thing you probably saw in the midterm, right? But nonetheless, I think it's helpful to kind of review what we've been talking about. So let's go back here to files and lecture notes and remind ourselves about our last 3 months. So when we started the class 3 months ago, we said that these were the 4 themes that were going to be in the McKinsey book, right? We spent a lot of time talking about these all semester, right? The first one was the concept of spread, ROIC against the cost of capital, right? And we talked about how important that was. That's fundamental not only for valuation, but just net present value. I mean, it's corporate finance, and you saw how it applies in the real world, right? We also talked about how important it was to drive cash flow, free cash flow, for example, not just net income, because income is a predictor of cash, but time value of money matters. We also said it's all about expectations, right? Because companies are worth their future cash flows, not their historical cash flows. And if nothing else, you use Bloomberg this semester and you got a chance to see a future expectation that most people don't, right? They use at best Yahoo Finance, and they're trying to understand what's happening with companies based on current or past results. And that's just not going to work. I'm not saying that what you see in Bloomberg is a guaranteed future, but it's a view of the future that the professionals are using. And I think it was very helpful to see that and use the real world tool to see that. But more importantly, to understand that is those future expectations that are going to drive price and value. And changes to those expectations change price and value. And you saw that played out multiple times, multiple assignments as we went through the semester, right? And the fourth part was about competitive advantage, and that it really does matter. And competitive advantage doesn't last forever. And we also learned from competitive advantage that not everybody has one. Like, we use a definition in this class that's a little unique. Like, you go to other people in the real world, and no matter how badly a company is doing, they think they're really good. I bet JCPenney thinks that they're probably one of the best retailers out there, even though they're probably near death's door in terms of disruption, right? Even Macy's. I was telling an earlier class, like, I went to Macy's for their Black Friday sale. Somebody, my girlfriend wants one of those $39 cardigan or whatever the cashmere sweaters they announce every Black Friday. We tried to go to the store to find the freaking thing. We couldn't find it. No one would help us. There was nobody even there to help us. The store was a shambles and a mess. Like, they don't have their act together. You can't say that that's competitive advantage, right? So what I'm just saying is, we said the definition for competitive advantage was relative, right? You got to be better than your peers. And that was the definition. I think even if you don't see used in the real world, I think would help you in your own context of thinking about it on a long-term basis. And the fact that those competitive advantages don't last forever. No matter how good Apple has been doing, eventually they're going to start struggling. They're going to mature. No matter how good NVIDIA is doing, eventually it's going to mature. You know, if you look at Intel, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, Intel was the dominant player in the world. You saw today, they just fired their latest CEO, right? They got $6.9 billion from the CHIPS Act from the Biden administration, who's pushing money out the door before Trump cuts it, right? And basically, they don't even know they can afford to build the plant in Ohio that all this money is based on, because they can't raise the money. And they're really, really struggling financially. And this is a company 15 years ago, if I was to be saying this thing, you'd be thinking I was nuts, because they were the dominant player in their industry. I'm just saying, competitive advantage is transient. You got to remember that, no matter who you're evaluating, whether it's financially or otherwise, and it's relative. And those are just four themes we talked about a lot this semester, right? And then we broke into the four sections, right? And the first section, and then we went into the math, I should say, before we got the sections of the key value drivers. And we use the math a lot, right? And this math, as I said, goes beyond this class. This is universal as to what drives value. It's all about growth and spread, right? And then ultimately, we then went into the four sections. The first section was EIC. And the whole point of EIC was to give you some language to talk about that external environment. Because 50% of the performance of any company, any industry, market, is that external environment, right? And so we said EIC is a way to talk about that external environment. And the first one we did was economy, economic factors. Now, we oversimplified the beta, right? Beta is not the only economic factor. I'm just trying to keep it simple for you, but beta is one. But that's the whole point. The whole semester, we've been talking about interest rates and inflation and how that affects stock prices. And you saw it in your Bloomberg trading challenge. Like, in this prior semester, when interest rates were coming down, inflation was coming down, stocks were going up, everybody's making money. It's easier to make money. Those were macro trends that are affects it. Matter of fact, you're going to see that roller coaster continue into the Trump administration. Because despite what that guy says, tariffs raise price. Tariffs are inflationary, right? And if you're trying to combat inflation, tariffs are not the way to do it. And starting a global trade war with tariffs and threatening the BRICS countries to say, oh yeah, if you try to create another currency besides the dollar as your reserve currency, we'll put over 100% tariff on you. That's not helpful to global trade. And prices are going to go high, interest rates are going to start going higher, and that will affect stock prices. And you may or may not get out of the politics of it. What I'm telling you is you'll know why, right? And that's the point. These are the economic sensitivities that we showed impact companies this semester. Then we used industry, and we talked about the five forces. And we gave you a way to explain industry spread, right? Because the whole point is, if some industries are doing better or worse than others, why? And we said the five forces would help us explain that, right? So what explains the higher spread? What explains the lower spread? What explains the break-even spread? And how could it change in 5 years? So that over time, rather than directly forecasting a spread in 5 years, we're using the change in forces to talk about how the spread should change in 5 years. But that's the idea. How will things get better, worse, or stay about the same in 5 years? That was the I part of the EIC. And then competitive advantage. Back to my Intel example. Do you have a competitive advantage and for how long? Nothing lasts forever. So if you have an advantage, why do you have an advantage? What gives you that advantage? What's going to make that advantage sustainable? And how long are you going to sustain it before other people figure it out? Right. And so those were just important questions that we addressed in the EIC conversation. Right. You did a project based on that. On the EIC, we then probably went to your most favorite part of the class. You had to learn a foreign language, and we went into historical analysis. Right. And the first part of historical analysis was conversion. And I look at you now, and it's almost, a little bit, I guess, funny and proud to see how far you've come in the last couple months, because terms like TII and TFI and CFI, you didn't know before you even got to this class. And now I think you understand how important they are in terms of cash flow, right? Because that set up our valuations. But I told you when we did this, I said, you're going to hate learning this process, but it's going to give you two advantages. I hope you see them in hindsight. Advantage number one was the ability to do analysis. It makes the analysis very straightforward, right? I'm doing a class for Amgen senior leaders tomorrow night, and we're going to do an ROIC tree of Amgen against their peers. And it's a real straightforward way to explain what's going on in the pharmaceutical industry. I did a class 2 weeks ago in Boston for a company called Bosch, big German private company, right? We got all their divisions, their data, and then we're comparing it against their publicly traded peers. It was very insightful for them to see how they were doing against their peers and what were the differences. That's what I'm saying. It's not just for this class. It's actually something we've stolen from McKinsey that I've given to you that you could use in the real world, right? As you're doing benchmarking. It's a good, straightforward way, because that explains changing ROIC for anything, anytime. And you actually understand the why, right? And we saw that with the historical analysis. We also saw that with the historical CFI. Because most people, free cash flow is a critical driver, stop at free cash flow, right? And I know you hated balancing, and I was a little dick about it, telling the TAs to give you zeros if you didn't have balanced statements, but I did it for a reason. Because balancing the statements basically means you don't make mistakes, right? Because if you just calculate a free cash flow in the real world, you could actually make a mistake and not know, right? Because you have no way to know that I forgot to put something in, right? You balance it, you know. But more importantly, I think it's very useful to not just say the company generated a bunch of cash, but to know what they do with it. Where'd the cash go, right? Most people, they have like two disconnected conversations, right? But in your case, they generated this cash. Oh, they use it to buy back a bunch of stock. Oh, they use it for acquisitions. Oh, they put it in the bank. Like whatever it is, we kind of had a better sense of what was going on with the company. So I think that was the benefit of the historical analysis class, part of the class, which again, your second projects were based on this, and that will serve you well. But what this really set us up for was the third part of the class, because essentially this led to the valuations, right? And tied to Modigliani-Miller, it very much gave us a very clean way to do those DCFs. We knew the operating values, we knew the non-operating values, we knew the enterprise values, we knew from that how we got to an equity value. We understood the process for doing it, and you guys built real world models. Like these models work. Like you valued real companies. Those prices were actual. Like the only difference between the models we did in this class and the ones that are used on Wall Street, level of detail. Like if you're doing Amgen on Wall Street, you're going to take Maritide and you're going to forecast Maritide. You're going to forecast every one of their drugs. You're going to add them up, and that's your revenue forecast for Amgen. Here, we just kind of did the overall revenue forecast. You do Starbucks, you're going to set number of cups of coffee, average price per cup of coffee, number of stores. You're going to do what food is sold, what the margin on that food, see a level of detail. We're still going to add up to the same numbers that we would do in this class, right? So I'm just saying, from a process wise, you learn how to value companies. And I told you, many of you may or may not have been too familiar with Excel. You're probably a lot more familiar with Excel now, right? You did a good job modeling. You completed the assignments, right? You built the models, you presented the models. That's what I want you to do. And this works well beyond the class. All right. Matter of fact, it's funny. I keep getting emails. I get even this semester. You can see on YouTube. There's some guy, I think he's in Norway, who's emailing me. He's like, "Can I have your model? I've been watching your videos." Because apparently when I post them on YouTube, other people are watching them and taking the class without being registered. I said, "No, I'm not going to give you the models because you're not actually paying to come to the class. But watch the videos." But that's the point. Like, even in the real world, people see practical value out of what we do. That was the third section. And by the way, that led to the fourth section. And the fourth section, which you're going to finish up on Wednesday, is our multiples. And that kind of put the idea of law of one price as an exclamation point. Just because you change your valuation methodology, you shouldn't get a different answer. Like, there's one value for a company, no matter how you value it. And so multiples are just rearranged math. And what you should understand, which is what Wednesday's assignment is all about, is multiples are just the key value driver equation rearranged. That's all it is. You rearrange key value drivers, you get a PE. You rearrange key value drivers, you get an EV to EBIT. You rearrange it, you get EV to EBITDA. We didn't do it in this class. You rearrange it, you get EV to revenue. It's just rearranged value. And that's the point. A DCF, we forecasted 6 years, 5 years, year by year, and then we went continuing value. Multiples, we just do continuing value from day one. That's all it is, right? At the end of the day, what are key value drivers? Multiples are an expression of growth and spread. That's all they are. That's your assignment on Wednesday. So when you have your company, who's your company? Who? And you're going to compare them against? So when you compare Eli Lilly against Novo, who's got the higher multiple? So Eli Lilly's multiple is higher than Novo because of this explanation of growth and spread. They either have higher expected growth or higher expected spread or some combination of the two. That's why they're trading at a premium. Okay. And then you're going to give me some real world context. Like, why is Lilly's expected growth a little bit higher than Novo's? Like, there should be some context to why you're doing this. Right. So that's the whole point. Like, I expect you to not just read numbers. Right? Anybody can read numbers. Anybody can solve an equation. Why? Why is the multiple higher? What's causing it to be higher in the real world? Give me a little context. Say a sentence or two about that. That should be part of your Wednesday presentation. Okay. But the whole point there is that it's just rearranged math from the valuation. But it gets back to the key value drivers. These are the driver of value, and you should understand that. And this is advanced. Most people are not taught this. Most people are not taught like why multiples do what they do. Right? They're at best given, oh, well, this company's trading in below the average. Everybody eventually goes to the average over the time. No, what you know is that average is an average of growth spread. And if you don't have that growth spread, you're not going to trade at average. And so a company with a low growth spread, unless they change their growth spread, is not going to go to average. As simple as that now sounds to you, and I hope it sounds straightforward, that's advanced. All right, to a lot of other people who were never even exposed to something like that and have no idea where PE comes from. Right? Other than you take the price, you divide by earnings per share. That's about as much as they've learned in most of their finance classes. And so that's a value. So nonetheless, that's what I expect to hear as we complete on Wednesday, right? And in the middle of all of this, there's something else I did. I made you write these 500-word papers, right? And I know you didn't want to write them and we didn't want to read them. Why did I make you do it? Why did I make you to write all those papers? By the way, this is why I need the TAs to read the papers next semester, because I don't want to read them. Seriously, 192 papers times 12 assignments. It's a lot of reading. But I'm going to do it. Why? Yeah. Absolutely. And understand how critical a real world skill that is. There are so many people who are just as smart as you that went to other schools that can solve the equation. That's not the skill, right? Understanding what it means when you solve the equation, understanding why you use the assumption you did when you solve the equation, that's the value. That's the differentiator, not just in this class, but in the real world. I see it all the time, right? I was telling the group earlier, a week or so ago, I was teaching a class for Leidos, one of their advanced programs. By the way, if anyone wants to work in the defense and aerospace industry, I know the head of recruiting at Leidos. They do all the recruiting for undergrads, for internships and full-time rotational, as well as Lockheed Martin people. So pass your names for those. Probably too late for an internship for next summer, but if you're thinking about it in the future. But regardless, this the point of the story is I was talking to these Leidos people who are 2 years older than you are, and are now trying to figure out how to put together budgets and ask for money at the company. And the whole point I was trying to explain to them was, again, anybody can put a number for the budget. Why? Why do you need this? What are you going to do with it? What's the context for that? That's the whole equation. It's not solving the math. Solving the math is the easiest part. When you graduate, for the vast majority of you, the most difficult math you will ever do in the real world will not go past algebra. If you work in a corporate finance career, you're not doing calculus, right? Maybe if you work on Wall Street in a very high quant area, you might, but that's rare. And so that's the point. What makes people smart is not that they can solve these algebraic equations. It's like they understand why they're solving them and what it means. That's why on Wednesday, yes, you can tell me that Lilly has a higher PE than Novo. Okay, anybody can do that. You didn't have to take a whole semester to figure that one out. Why? All right. Then you're going to get into the growth spread. Okay, why do they have a higher growth? What's causing Lilly's growth to be higher than Novo's? Right. That's the value. Right. And so continue this beyond this class, not just at Smith, but in the real world. It will differentiate you. It'll differentiate you from a lot of other students who don't know how to do anything else but solve equations. And when you're looked at that, you'll move up faster, right? You'll move up faster, you'll be appreciated more, you'll have more value. And so that's the only other thing I want to make sure that I understood why I did some of the things I did, because I think it's not going to help you, right? And hopefully you got some appreciation for that. If not, you at least made it through the class. All right, questions, comments, concerns about anything? So as I said, I am going to leave the room because if you are able to submit the course evaluation, I don't want you to feel I'm putting pressure on you to submit it in any way, right? Someone can be leering over your shoulder when you're filling it out. So if you're able to fill it out, please fill it out. If for some reason you're still not able to fill it out because of the university's technical challenges, fill it out by sometime tomorrow. Okay. I'm going to change the deadline from 5 o'clock today to 5 p.m. tomorrow. Okay. But only fill out the extra point opportunity if you actually fill out the evaluation. But if you do, it's 1 point. And by the way, as a reminder, with an exclamation point, this is the final extra credit opportunity this semester. There will be no more extra credit opportunities. There is no rounding on the final grade. So if you're worried about that sort of thing, do this extra credit opportunity, do the exam, the replacement assignment by tomorrow, because those are the final ones. Just remind you about that. Okay. Otherwise, where is the sign-in sheet for attendance? Okay. Make sure you sign that before you leave today. And then otherwise, if you want to use the rest of the time to work with your groups to get synced up for Wednesday, feel free to do that. But looking forward to hearing your presentations on Wednesday. All right. Good luck.